I'm certainly delighted to have joined the group this afternoon and to have the opportunity to sit in on a couple of the discussions that were taking place. Before I commence, I'd like to share a quote from that great British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill. Courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is what it takes to sit down and listen. I hope that you will take the next 20 minutes to listen and that we can have some lively questions. Well, over the past 45 plus years in this industry, I've seen a lot. I've learned an incredible amount. I've seen a lot of winners, and I've seen a lot of people who have lost their businesses. But to date, I haven't seen anything like what's happening now in our industry. And it's really about the pace. Let's start by talking about the Great British High Street and of course, the city centres around the world. You know, the traditional bricks and mortar business is under huge pressure and is making way for a lot more, in fact, a conveyor belt of fast food stores, nail bars, vaping stores, entertainment centres, as bricks and mortar seems to be getting close signs. In 2017, in the UK alone, 5,800 stores closed. In 2017, the vacancy rate in the British High Street was 11.7%. In 2017, the shopping centre vacancy rate was in fact higher than the High Street at 13.7%. And that great British institution, the British BHS stores, when they closed shop a year or so ago, still 52% of those stores are shuttered, closed. But it's not just the UK. If I looked at the United States on Manhattan Island, 22% of retail stores are shuttered up. No one shopping in them. And this has obviously been exacerbated by the continual increase in online, over 15% in the UK, over 17% in the US. And obviously it's going to be 20, 22, 25% in a short period of time. And one last statistic before I make you really desperately sad, that the Centre for Retail Research predicts that 10,000 stores will be closed this year in the United Kingdom and 100,000 stores over the next 10 years. If that's not a sobering enough thought, I think we need to think about, as social creatures, how do we make sure that we get to meet other people if we're not going into shops and stores? And does that mean an increase in crime rate or social behavior? We'll talk more about that a little later. So really, what is the formula for success for today and tomorrow? What do retailers really need to do to bring shopping experience back to life, to bring energy? The good news is that there are many retailers that are doing a great job, that we're seeing some great results. And I don't know whether many of you saw the results today that were announced about Selfridges. They've just had a great year of 11.7% increase in their sales, and they're doing 1.7 billion off 3 sites. But innovation is around. It's around in the marketplace, and that certainly brings me hope. In 2018, I don't believe that customers are just the kings and queens. They are the all-knowing, all-powerful, I call them super beings. They have every piece of knowledge on their device. Where the product came from, how much the competition is selling it at. They demand, our super beings demand convenience, transparency, value for money every step of the way. And if they're shopping in bricks and mortar, they expect a great environment. If they're shopping online, they also expect speed. Customers compare their prices, as we know, and their product reviews on their smartphones, on the internet, and their knowledge is great today and will continue to get greater. Any retailer who wants to stay in the game, let alone ahead of it, needs to think in an entirely different way. Move too slowly or get it wrong, and the customer will be lost forever. So what is changing? Number one, the customer is demanding more exciting experiences. They have high expectations. And if that's not enough to contend with, then there, of course, is the digital reality to get to grips with. Whether it's next day delivery, whether it's next hour delivery, personalization, disruptive retail models, and the innovations just keep coming and coming. The retail world across, the retail business across the world has really been turned on its head. And somebody asked me the other day, Andrew, how would you describe the pace of change? And I said, I lived and worked in Germany for a number of years, and you're driving down the Autobahn at 140 kilometers an hour, you look in your rearview mirror, you see a black spot. 2 minutes later, vroom, that black spot has just overtaken you. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the competition. And that's the speed of change. Arguably, one of the greatest shifts is the ability to buy online. And worldwide retail sales are set to be 27 trillion by 2020. That's less than 2 years away. However, it's not just about making purchases online. We know that our tablets and our devices are used pre the shopping experience online and after that. I'd like to talk about two retail giants in the world. Number one, Alibaba, and secondly, Amazon. Alibaba, and I love this business, I've been to visit them, I've talked with their leaders, and it blows me away that the business is only 14 years old. Singles Day, November 2017, last year, one-day sales, 25 billion in one day. Let me compare that to the entire United States of America retail business over a weekend, Thanksgiving weekend, 13 billion. I see a lot of people shaking their heads. Amazon has come up with fantastic innovation. It's an innovation junkie. I think it's turned traditional businesses and our thinking on its head. Every penny that they used to make on their business, they were reinvesting back in the business. I noticed in a recent report they're starting to make money on their retail side of their business, and it won't be long before they're making a lot of money. And when we think about everything they're doing, even the next technological shift, voice, they have Alexa, which is way ahead of the pack. And I don't know how many of you have Alexa in your home. Excellent. my wife has it on our lighting system. I do curse Alexa at times when it doesn't quite obey what I say. And when you think about Amazon Prime, try before you buy wardrobe. Order online, try it at home, and then pay for it. That's what customers are looking for. They want simple things today because customers are time-starved. They need things to be done in a hurry. Well, today I'd like to explore some of the ways that I believe this is happening and share a few stories from my experience. But let me start on two key words. And if there's only two things that you remember, two words, and that is be relevant. Because if you're not relevant today, you're going to become irrelevant. And I spent 2 years writing a book, researching it on the subject of relevancy. And it's titled, Almost is Not Good Enough. Because you can't be almost today. You either are or you're not. And we've got massive changes happening in the industry. My book is packed with real-life examples and stories about exceptional retailers and retailers' stories. And we have 4 criteria. And they are, number 1, know your customer and understand their emerging wants, needs, desires, and aspirations. And I'm going to talk in detail about these. Constantly innovate and innovate with intelligence and excellence. 3, hire talented people who are passionate about what they do. I think in retail, you have to have passion. And I describe passion as the human soul on fire, because that to me is what it's all about, a burning desire. And 4thly, keep change at the center of your business. And when I was writing the book, I decided to ask a number of chief executives and chairmen from around the world, and I asked them one question. How would you describe how you keep your business relevant for today and tomorrow? And in 4 simple sentences, and 35 of them contributed, and they're all in the book. It's no coincidence that know your customer was the number 1 on the top of the list, because it is the customer who makes the decision whether we as retailers will be successful or not. The fact is that the retail graveyard is full of once great businesses that were relevant, that allowed themselves to become irrelevant. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that your business is not in that state over the next few years. Some of them were venerable institutions, national icons. Simply put, they lost their focus on the customer and they ended up paying the ultimate penalty. Interestingly, 3 weeks ago I was in the United States, and it used to be the home of department stores. And somebody showed me a clip from just 15 years ago in the United States where there were 110 department store groups. Today there are 18 department store groups. None of this means that failure is, of course, inevitable and that course correction cannot take place. And I'm going to share a couple of my stories on course correction. Anybody here know the Canadian marketplace? Okay. Well, I'm going to share a story from the Canadian a business called Holt Renfrew. If I described Holt Renfrew, it's a Harvey Nichols or Harrods of the UK, a Bergdorf Goodman of the United States, or a De Bijenhof in Amsterdam. And I took over that business a few years ago, and it had become irrelevant to a modern customer. And I spent a couple of months touring stores, looking around, talking to customers, looking, listening, and understanding what people were looking for, where the problems were. And some of the staff members, when I said to them, "You don't have any contemporary or modern brands." And they said, "But we can't sell them." And I said, "But you haven't got them. And so how can you sell them?" And they said, "Well, we don't think you could sell them." And we had a restaurant and a number of restaurants that looked as if the customers weren't moving. In fact, I wondered whether some of them were still alive. They'd become institutions, and customers would go into the restaurants, they'd sit there over a pot of coffee for a couple of hours. And there were many things about the business that were irrelevant to a customer, and the customer was aging. Now roll on a 3-year period, and we introduced 40 new brands from around the world, fashion brands, fashion designers. We created a World Design Lab. We brought in new eateries for customers. We had exceptional and world-class events and happenings, from the biggest Italian event ever staged in Canada, which was the patron of honor was Sophia Loren, through to flower markets and everything else. And the business, in fact, it was 4 years, started to attract not only that traditional customer, but a modern customer plus a contemporary customer. And I remember going home one Saturday and saying to my wife, "This is the tipping point of this business," because I saw a lot of young people with bags bulging and walking out of the flagship store. And that business has gone from strength to strength, and it's an iconic business today. My second example is Selfridges in London. How many of you have heard of Selfridges? Okay. Now, 30 years ago, my mum would go shopping there if she wanted to buy a coat or she wanted to buy a kettle. She went there because she knew that they knew what she wanted, and she could always get what she wanted in the store. Walk into Selfridges today, the same location on Oxford Street, but a whole new generation of customers. A contemporary customer, a modern customer, and a classic customer. They're going there, and it's not just filled with middle-aged and little old ladies. You can have up to 50 nationalities shopping there in a day. And customers age from 10 years old to 90 years old. And there's no question that the Selfridges have benefited from the fantastic location, and don't underestimate that glossy yellow carrier bag. But the store has made a huge effort in staying relevant with their innovative windows to their superb assortments and ongoing updated assortments and events, happenings, excitement. It's become a magnet. And that's why, and most importantly, they're an omni-channel retailer. Very, very important. And being relevant 24/7 as an omni-channel retailer is essential, whatever business that you're in. So the customer and keeping them happy. My second point is obviously about innovation and constantly innovation. I often say, show me a business that's innovating with excellence, and I'll show you a successfully driven organization that will make profit. And innovation is not just changing things for the sake of it, it's doing something with a purpose and an output. And innovation may well come in innovation in technology, events, store loyalty, fabrication, or maybe an outreach to a local community. A few years ago, I ran a business in South Africa. How many people have been to South Africa? Okay. A business called Woolworths in South Africa. Totally different to any other Woolworths in the world. I always have to say that. And we were a top-end food business and middle to better-end fashion business. And I really wanted to gain a successful organization. I wanted to gain greater loyalty from our customer base, but give back to the local community. And we have a lot of poverty in South Africa. So we established a loyalty program which would appeal to schools, and we'd be able to fund books and equipment for schools. So we brought out a card called My School, and customers could choose an African school to have their points which would be awarded to that school. It was hugely successful, and customers would come in. We marketed the program, and we said, rather than using it on your own card, use it on your My School card. And the cashiers would ask, would you like me to put it on your My School card? Again, the program is now supporting 500 schools throughout South Africa and gives many millions of rands to those schools. And then we look at innovation, and in the couple of workshops I had the privilege of sitting in today, we heard about digital mirrors, which capture the garment that you're wearing and maybe a different color or an alternative, and you can obviously use social media to send the information to your friends. A wonderful innovation I saw 6 months ago when I was in Shanghai was called Mobi24 Convenience Store. No staff, no registers, designed on wheels. It was probably the size of this podium and double the width. And it sold convenience food. And you had an app, you could get into it, you could buy what you wanted, and most importantly, it was on wheels, because once driverless vehicles are allowed in China, and it's going to be another year or so, the vehicle will return itself to the distribution center for refilling. So being technologically innovative is going to be very, very important. And I think one of the biggest innovations that's being tested at present time, there's a proprietary brand called Misha Pay. You can go into the store, you can read and the products you're buying, you can help yourself at the checkout point to a bag, and you can walk out. So the opportunity to buy immediately and only spend 30 seconds at checking out is going to be very, very important. My third point is about talent, because I think talent and technology is critically important. And I believe we need to obviously recruit the best, train and develop them, but let people make mistakes. Make sure they don't make the same mistake more than once, but allow people space. And in my experience, that's really, really important. People, ladies and gentlemen, in my book, make or break companies. And after all of these years, I have 3 key things to share with you about people. Number 1, make sure in your businesses that you have leaders who inspire. Because leaders give a shadow, and you want people to be able to follow that shadow. And it's that inspiration. Secondly, management who can ruthlessly implement. I've seen many great organizations have consultants come in. They spend zillions of dollars, pounds, whatever the currency, and they get left with discs and packs. And all of a sudden, 1 year later, the business is still not doing well. Why? Because there hasn't been ruthless implementation of the plans. So you've got to have people management who can implement. And lastly, and not least, frontline people or call center people, whichever it may be, who can meet or exceed customers' expectations. There is nothing worse than going into a store, and I've heard some stories shared today about poor service or inept service, whether it's online or in store. My last ingredient that I'd like to share with you is a story about change. 18 months ago, I was in Japan, and I had the pleasure of meeting with the chairman of Fast Retail, the owners of Uniqlo. And I think they do a fantastic job out in the marketplace. It's one of my great benchmarks. And I walked into his office, and he was sitting behind this huge desk, and he had one framed, I was going to say, message on his wall. It was the size of this screen here. And he said to me when I sat down, my eyes kept looking up at this sign. He said, "Andrew, you like my sign?" I smiled and I said, "I don't like it. I love it," because it said, "Change or die." And he said, "That is the essence of our business. We course correct our organization every single week or month." And we had a long discussion about what he meant by that. And he said, even if it's just a tad, we want to make sure that we're in line with our customers' evolving needs. And the story I'd like to share, when I was the president in the United States of Saks business, we had been through a lot of change in our business. And I wanted to, it was the first Christmas I was involved with the business, and we wanted to make a statement on Fifth Avenue. And you got a lot of competition on Fifth Avenue, one of the great shopping streets of the world. So we decided to invest, and we used a Dutch company, Philips, to come and put a unique snowflake display on the exterior of our business. And it had a soundtrack to it, it had strobe lighting, and every 15 minutes there would be a show. And the traffic department forced us to change it every half an hour because we were causing traffic jams. But I came walking out of the store on the second night, and I walked slap bang into a crowd, and they were oohing and ahhing at this 3-minute presentation. There were hundreds of people staring at the exterior. And when it came to an end, there was a rousing cheer and a round of applause. But the point I want to make to you is, I was rather pleased, but the point I want to make is, it turned Saks into more than a place to come and do your holiday shopping. It had become a place of wonder and delight, and it was utterly relevant to people's hopes and desires for the Christmas season. And in fact, people then poured into the store. So, what else can we do to attract customers into our business? Because I use the word a lot, and I use it in my book, about we as retailers have to be magnetic. You hear the old-fashioned retailers talking about, we've got to drive traffic into your store. You only drive cattle. You don't drive customers. You attract people. You make it a magical experience. Customers don't just want to be served by us, they want to be thrilled by us, whether it's online or whether it's in store. Retail, ladies and gentlemen, is about theatre. We're the writers, the actors, the set designers, and everything rolled into one. And that's our responsibility. It's not about discounting. It's about remaining relevant. So in conclusion, I've shared with you that changes are happening, and they're happening mighty fast. I've shared with you a couple of stories to demonstrate this. There will always be winners and losers. There always have been, there always will be. I do believe very sincerely in bricks and mortar and the future of it, provided it becomes a real omnichannel business. But you can't just be a bricks and mortar retailer, or you can't just be a pure player. I believe in the future of the high street, provided everybody is prepared and retailers are prepared to bring energy into there. Retailers need to innovate, understand the technologies presented by the technologies to create an experience. And we must never, ever forget that retail, whatever technology is around, is about having the right merchandise at the right time, in the right quantification, and being relevant to those customers. We need to create that buzz in our stores and online. It's that wow factor that makes us as retailers extraordinary. Because, ladies and gentlemen, almost is not good enough.